Hey, how's everybody doing? So, oh, actually, that's very loud. Okay, that's probably better. So, yeah, oh, look, it's announcing my own live stream. So, welcome everybody. Ags, hopefully you can join us. Ags is our Mirrodin Tech Merfolk expert. And today, we're going to be altering some Merfolk, or as we used to call them, Merfolks. Recently, I've been on a bit of a binge for making some alterations. Here's a Goku altar that I recently made. You'll notice that the name of the card is DragonBall Monk, so it was kind of natural to want to make a Dragon Ball altar. Can't really seem to get it to focus, but we'll try again. Here we go. There you go. For some reason, this webcam doesn't really handle the colors well, and apparently not the brightness either, but you get the idea. So, there's that one. I also did a Vegeta altar very recently. What's the magic, Kakarot? Yeah, they don't get along. You might be wondering why it's on a mountain. Simply because I didn't want to mess up anything more valuable. As I'm becoming comfortable with the with sort of the altering technique that I'm using here. So I started off using markers, but then I realized that with a simple marker or pen outline and then acrylic paint, I could get the more even and smooth colors that you're seeing. I'll try to get it so the glare doesn't affect as much. Let's see here. So thank you everybody who's watching. Alright, looks like we have a live chat as well. I don't know how to integrate that yet into OBS, apart from when I do Twitch streams, so we'll get to that later. But for now, thanks to everybody who's joining us so far. I think my girlfriend's watching as well, so hello. Love you. So, let's see, what should we work on today? I think a Curse Catcher is a good place to start. And in case you're wondering, yes, there's some copyright-free music in the background. So, here's the card we're going to begin with which we'll begin. Curse Catcher. So I personally have a Merfolk deck, however, the one that I have is, what do you call it, very much budget. My Ether Vials I leave in my other decks. For example, I have my Ether Vials in my Death and Taxes at the moment. So, yeah, it's not exactly something I take to a Legacy tournament, even though it is technically Legacy legal. So, let's see, Ags gave me Ags being Christian Aguilar, the Merfolk's player, an idea of how he wanted it done. You can see here sort of what we're going to be modeling after. That's fine. So one of the first things I like to do is just sort of opacify the border here, because in this case it's going to be more of an extension than it is a complete alteration. You know, we're not going to be turning this into Goku or Frieza or anything. So what I'll do here is probably just use a little bit of black around the edges, just like I said, to opacify it. So that way when we start making like the actual paint and color alterations on top of it, it'll they'll actually take, and you won't see the background sort of bleed through. So for something like that, usually you want a little bit of a bigger brush. So in this case, this is a number 2 brush. Probably can't see it. There it is, kind of. Anyway, it's a number 2, and for the finer detail work, then we start getting into the zeros and the smaller. So like here's my 10-0, and all these are some variation of 0. This is a 20-0, for example. But anyway, like I said, first we're laying down sort of this base coat, if you will. So to do that, usually take a little bit of just some basic black paint. I like Mars Black, the Mars Black from Liquitex. I swear by Liquitex. Some people also swear by Liquitex. There's a few out there that don't like Liquitex. I don't understand why on earth you wouldn't. Their basic paint is amongst the best bang for your buck. As you can see, most of these are Liquitex basics. I have some of the heavy body too, but obviously, what do you call it? It's a heavier body, so there's circumstances where one is favored versus the other. In this case, we can use basics. Another one that I like to use are the Winsor and Newton. But Winsor and Newton, I like more for once you already have sort of like an opaque base coat to do work on top of it, especially with colors. So here, as you can see, we're just literally going to cover up any areas, being very careful, make sure we draw or create straight lines. Now, you might be asking, well, why don't you use tape? I could use tape, but that's time consuming. And given the fact that I actually used to be a surgeon, I think I have enough manual dexterity that I can get decently straight lines, at least for the purposes of altering a card. See? Then you save all the time from the tape and everything. Goodness, I've never been able to get this camera to focus well. Actually, you know what? I do have solutions, so let me switch that real quick. Logitech, for those of you that actually do live streaming, Logitech does offer you to do real-time camera setting manipulation. So that's actually what I'm doing right now. And then you can manually change the focus. For all features will probably do you want to run in the background? Yes, I do. Here we go. So for example, webcam control, focus, take it off of the automatic, and then let's set it up here. It's a little more challenging than I thought to get it to focus appropriately, but let's try it. Then after a certain point, it's not even just the focus, but also the brightness control. But you get to see there, in the bottom left corner, how it's already a perfect straight line. Now, the other thing that you might have noticed already, but you have to be careful with as you're doing this work, is to try to make sure that you don't do too thick paint, right? Because, again, this first of all we're trying to do is cover up and opacify the elements of the card, like the blue border, etc. So you may be saying, well, Doc, don't you want it to be a little opaque and thick? Well, you want it to be opaque, but you don't want it to be thick. So in fact, touching up with a little bit of water, and then coming back, and make sure it's nice and smooth, that'll be great, because if you don't take care to do that, then when you start adding your color layers on top of this, you're going to actually physically see the locations where it didn't lay down perfectly flat, and you don't want that. In fact, this doesn't even have to be perfectly opaque, because again, we're going to be applying a layer of paint on top of it. So, does making it perfectly opaque help cover up the elements underneath? Yes, but is it worth losing perfect flatness? Well, no, especially not if you're somebody who's going to be using this in a tournament setting, which I believe Christian Aguilar will be. So, here we go. Speaking of Christian Aguilar, let's see if he's joining us. We have a group chat going for American Tech. Looks like he has seen the message. I don't know if he's actually watching, so we'll just keep an eye out. So let's go back to the reference pieces here. Hope you guys are enjoying some of the copyright free music. So those are the ones I wanted me to do. We'll use this as a reference again. So when doing these extensions, they're actually a good thing and a bad thing. I was going to say a curse, but curse catcher, get it? But I mean, the reason I say that is because number one, you already have elements to work with, right? You already have sort of like this element here that you can extend out. The problem with that also is that you have to get it right, meaning, okay, great, yes, you have something to build off of, but you have to match the color. You have to match sort of the shade. You have to match everything that's going on there. So, like I said, it's a good thing, and at the same time, it's also could be a tricky thing. Now, let's see, how much did they extend it in this one? They left the creature part intact. Alright, so we'll do the same thing for our good friend Christian here, as we continue to do this. And like I said before, you can use tape if you want. I just find it's just entirely too time consuming, unless it's very, very precise work. Case in point, I do sometimes alter unlimited basic lands to make them look more like beta. Do I actually try to pass them off as beta? No, of course not. I'm not that guy. But I do personally prefer to have black bordered basics and an old school, the old school format. Unfortunately, having black bordered basics is very expensive. Nowadays, a good beta, let's see, there's coming out nice and flat. A good beta basic land is like $10, $12, depending on which one and depending on the condition. That's just too expensive for my tastes. Alright, thanks again to everybody coming in. Seeker Smoothie, love you too. Hey Johnny, how's it going? Looks like my chat was scrolled to a place where I couldn't see. So thanks Johnny for joining us. So, yeah, I hope Ags will be very happy with these altars. Just a lot of them. So, like I said, recently I've been experimenting with other techniques. You can see there the examples of the Dragon Ball altars. Oh, I should probably also take down where it says all these, actually, I don't think it matters. All these other things, like the, Black-Green Turbo Deaths or whatever. Those are remnants from the last, tournament that we had. Let's see, do I still have the terminal up? I don't feel like mixing right now, so whatever. Anyway, let's come back to this. So, in fact, if you'll pardon me just a moment, I hope none of you are motion sick. I warned you. We're going to try to do something a little different. We just get you guys a little closer to the action. There we go. And the other thing that this does too is if you have heavily played cards, or cards where you have what do you call it? The edges that are a little frayed or whatever, this kind of does fix them up. I can't seem to get that focus to really work the way I want it. Can I make a couple of adjustments, guys? Sorry. Hope nobody's dizzy. Here we go. Logitech will manual focus. There we go. Usually I'll sacrifice the little blue bar here. But I'll leave it on the round part. Would need like this part here and here. Right. And remember, at this point, we don't have to be 100% precise. That's what our fingernails are for. So like, for example, here. Just very lightly rub it in like that. Then you got a smoothing out, and you just hit the little imperfection there, and you're done. Ta-da. Great. So we'll continue bringing it up. And pardon me just a second, I'm going to adjust the camera one last time to make it a little bit more natural for myself. There we go. And if you see me going back over areas where I previously painted, again, I'm trying to get it to smoothen down as much as possible. It's more important that it lays on smooth than completely opaque. And like I said, don't worry about the imperfections too much because you can always fix that, like I said, just with the little touch of the fingernail like that. So now we just have this bottom part here. Let me just check it on the chat, see if anybody else is saying anything. Just a secret smoothie there. And get some water mixed up in here. And we just have this last part down here. Smoothing out this part here as well. Getting a little bit more pigment, and so to finish this last part here. Boom. Perfect. So you can see really this brush is quite well positioned to do it. Again, this is a number 2 brush. See, rather than in this direction, you can actually use the reverse direction of the brush motion for these edges, like that. And if you go over ever so slightly, again, the fingernail technique usually cleans that up quite well. So I think it's looking pretty good. Yeah, that's pretty nice. Again, you can see sort of where it's wet a little bit right now. As it dries off, it's going to lay down even more smoothly, and that's really what you want. So, there. So, while this one dries off, we can start on another one. Give me 1 second, everybody. Vegeta's wondering why he was left out, so we'll bring him back in there. If you're wondering why it's out of focus, if you're just joining us, it's because the focus has been manually set to be right above here. Right about here, so that you can actually see it being altered. And then, of course, Kevin is being very mindful of the fact that I still have the legacy overlay up. In fact, yes, I'm very much aware of that. The problem is, of course, I haven't made a unique and specific, what do you call it, overlay for alters. At some point I will. But for now, let's just take these off, since I have a feeling I'll continue to hear about that. And then it is not February 17th, so we'll take that off as well. And we are not playing a Legacy tournament. The problem is I don't know which of these text images is Legacy. So for now, we're just going to leave that there. Since technically this is a Legacy, this is going to be an alter used in a Legacy deck. So we'll keep it that way. Alright, so coming back. Again, just like these nice, smooth strokes. if you can do it in a controlled manner, you'll usually get the straight line that you need, as you can already see. And as I mentioned earlier, I did used to be a surgeon, so having this sort of fine control may be not as easy to attain immediately. It's a lot of practice. So that's fine. We don't need to add too many layers simultaneously, because then you'll get undesired thickness there. Here we're using the sort of reverse brush stroke technique. And come back and get the close border there. And again, you see imperfections like that little white ding here. It's hard to tell, but anyway, those obviously disappear when you do this. You know, in fact, you know, I have some cards from back in the 90s that unfortunately, because, you know, back then our deck box was our denim pockets and our rubber bands, so some of my cards did go through the wash, and as a consequence, you know, got pretty destroyed. Mostly just the like paint or whatever. But I took one of those cards actually and was able with alteration to sort of restore it. So it's a pretty badly damaged card, but the warping was actually minimal. So I was actually quite satisfied with my ability to sort of recover the card itself. I shouldn't be telling people that because Kevin's just going to complain at the next tournament. Good judge call. That's me calling you out, Kevin, to see if you're watching. Probably not. Yeah. So as you can already tell, this is some of the more tedious work in terms of altering. Some people don't do this. You know, honestly, I didn't used to actually do this, laying down this like sort of base coat. The problem is, you start to realize that the sort of underlying architecture, frame of the card, whatever, does tend to seep through even despite your best efforts. In fact, I have an example to show you guys. Kind of trap myself here so I can get out. Here's a good example. So that's an altered island. I think it's 4th edition or something from back around those times. But look carefully. So even though I went to considerable efforts to opacify it ahead of time, you can actually see very subtly, maybe not on this quality webcam, but sort of the frame kind of peeking through the lighter colors there. So, and that's with using this black opacification technique. Now, obviously, it's not, excuse me, not terribly obvious, but, you know, for somebody like me, who in many ways is kind of a perfectionist, it is obvious enough. Excuse me. Anyway, let's continue. And even that little bit of a break allowed it to dry, so now it's laying on and being more opaque. But again, you have to be careful because when it's dry, it's easier to add on thicker and thicker layers of paint, which is not desirable. So it might not be a bad idea to go back and get a little bit of water and then just retouch Make sure everything comes out perfectly smooth. Again, it all depends on what the purpose of the altar is, and in this case, like I said, there's a good chance it will be used in competitive Legacy tournaments. So I want to make sure that they have the best chance of being tournament legal. Of course, we all know that at the end of the day, only the final judge, excuse me, only the head judge has the final say. So anybody who makes altars and guarantees you that they're going to be legal is lying through their teeth, because nobody knows the final decision of the judge. The judge can decide to not allow any altars, and he'd be perfectly within his rights to do so. They don't usually go to that extreme, but again, I'm just saying that they could, and they'd be right to do so. So I think in Christian's case, the guy who commissioned this, he has copies of all this. In fact, I know for a fact he has already copies of all these. I don't remember if they've already been altered, but presumably he's gotten the okay for them, at least in local tournaments. You know, as I'm listening to this music, which is copyright free, I realize it actually sounds just like every other song I heard at Ultra. Ultra Music Festival here in Miami. I was just there not long ago. I am a huge EDM fan, but more specifically, I tend to like progressive vocal trance more so than some of this other more pop style. I can already feel it getting a little dry, so I'm just gonna use some water. You know, I believe it was actually Liquitex that made the first water-based acrylic paints. So it makes sense. They are, again, I consider them the best. Just how smoothly it goes down. Wow. Just feel that too. There you go. And then one last side over here. When doing these, you often find yourself getting sort of in the zone. Especially for the more menial aspects, like where we are right now. And yeah, this one's essentially done, as you can see. Because remember, we don't need 100% perfect opacity. And even if we did, you just wait for it to dry. Like, even right now, in the time I've spoken, it dried a little bit, and there you go. Again, I do not have very thick paint on my brush. It's pretty watery. But not too watery, because then you're going to just wash off what you already had on there as a water. So don't overdo it. Yeah, that's pretty good, actually. There we go. Now let's revisit the first one. Oh, that's nice. That's really nice. You can see there. There's a couple. Now, again, if you're being a real stickler, there's a couple of spots here and there. They're a little thick. That's fine. You just apply some water or watery paint and just smoothen it down. Especially, right now I'm doing it just as an example, but especially for the more expensive altars, or the altars that are maybe going for like a vintage deck, I pay much more attention to the flat in this. And in those cases I probably would use tape. But there we go, that's fine. So I got 2 of those down. Let's see how we're doing in the chat. Alright, looks like no new messages so far. That's fine. So let's do... Yeah, let's just go ahead and make today the Curse Catcher Day. So where the bloody hell did I put the rest of them? They're here. Really tightly packaged. That's what she said. And again, we use the same technique as before. Sometimes your brush will have a little stray hair. Don't think you can see it. Yeah, it's too small. It's a single stray hair. But it causes a few little irksome imperfections. So in those cases, you just try to kind of roll. You see kind of how I'm rolling as I drop the paint? Sometimes that helps. So it looks like we're running out of pigment. So we'll take some more paint there. Again, I'm using Liquitex Basics. And the color is Mars Black. A little bit of water. And we'll continue. And again, you see this part that's a little translucent? Guess what? Goodbye. And then we have one more Curse Catcher to go after this in terms of making it black opaque like this. And then we can actually start doing some actual painting. But already you can start to see how time-consuming making altars can be. Now for me, I have almost zero time to do this, as I've already alluded to several times. I am a physician. I'm no longer a surgeon, I'm a neurologist actually, but I am a physician, and that does take a considerable amount of time. So this really represents more of a hobby. That said, you know, especially in cases like this where I'm doing it as a commission, time is a factor. And so sometimes people wonder why it takes a while to get them back to you, and you can already start to see why. That being said, Christian has been very understanding in terms of my time, so I appreciate that. Now, it's good to be hearing some electronic. Earlier today, actually, I had a playlist of different covers of anime music, specifically Miyazaki music. A lot of really nice instrumental pieces, like violin and sort of string quartet, or violin and like I don't know, rock opera kind of style music, contemporary kind of sound. It was nice, actually. Then I was also listening to a ballet earlier. I don't know if anybody here's an opera fan, but if you're familiar with Gilbert and Sullivan, they actually created a ballet using musical excerpts from several of their operettas. So the ballet is Pineapple Paul, P-O-L-L, short for Polly, and the music from it comes from various works of theirs, the operettas, such as the HMS Pinafore, to name one, Pirates of Penzance, etc. I've only performed, actually, myself in Ruddigore and Yeoman of the Guard. I actually have not performed. Oh, one of my hobbies is actually being a bassoonist. But I have not performed in HMS Pinafore, which is sad, because I really like that piece. Those of you who watch Family Guy are probably familiar with HMS Pinafore without even realizing it. Certainly those of you that watch Old School Simpsons are as well. Great. 3 down, 1 to go. Again, anybody who's watching right now, thank you so much for joining. Here, Goku wants to get featured a little bit too. So I actually did a sort of Bob Ross style kind of video like this a while back. But it was also time-lapsed, so this part was glossed over in about like 15 seconds or less. But back then, I also was not as experienced in terms of what was the most ideal for tournament legal cards. So my paint thickness was considerably greater back then. I wouldn't say the art was better or worse in terms of the quality, just simply I was using more globs of paint than anything I would use now. And you'll see that especially as I start doing some of the detailed work. I use incredibly small amounts of paint. And if need be, just layer it down. Right now, I'm using a number 2 brush, and this thing is just gargantuan compared to the stuff I'll use later. You also have to be careful not to let it get too wet. Right now we're doing edge work, but if you're trying to lay down a base coat to cover up the whole thing, let's say you're doing a full altar, not just an extension, you have to be careful not to lay down too wet of paint all at once, because you will actually physically warp the card. And here I'm using the reverse brush technique. Perfect. Wow, clean that up. Alright. You can see fingernail goes a long way. And again, the trick is not to apply pressure. Just let it kind of glaze or glide across. You can tell when I'm getting like tired or frustrated because I just like don't care. I make these little mistakes. Had a long day today. I actually gave a lecture on Alzheimer's disease, memory, and clinical trials to a local retirement community. So that was a lot of fun. I actually do outreach stuff like that, maybe a couple times a month. It's one of the nice things about being an academic physician as opposed to a private practice physician. But you literally, your job is literally to teach. Again, thank you for joining us. This is Merfolk Institute of Technology, the only institution of higher learning for Magic that has actual professors. No offense to Brian. There we go. Now we're just smoothing it over a little bit. And just have one last little corner. Yeah, that's pretty much it. There we go. And there you go. Those areas are just wet, but they're laying down pretty flat, as you can see. So this little guy is done. Now all we have left is to go back and actually make the alterations. So let's start with the first one that we dried off. Where to go? Here it is. So, again, we have a reference figure available to us, so let's go ahead and open that up. Usually I like to freeform it. Sometimes, when it's just an extension, no matter who does the extension, it's going to pretty much look the same. I think this is one of those cases here. So one of the most challenging aspects of doing these, especially the extension specifically, is the color matching. Color matching proves a special challenge. Like I was saying earlier in the stream, because, what do you call it? Well, not only because you already have sort of elements there that have gradients and so forth, but because different printings will actually have different colors, different shades. So I've had, I made alters of 2 or 3 of the same card, and you could tell they were printed at different places, or the printing process was different, such that I actually had to use very different sort of pigments, very different color combinations to color match appropriately. So you might end up using quite a few different paints just for the same card. So in this case, now I'm going to clean off the brush I was just using. So as I was saying earlier, I have much finer brushes for the detail work. However, I don't even think we're at the detail level of work yet. Because if you think about it, where we are here, we're going to be extending the paint that comes out from here out, at least these colors, right? So that pretty much requires broad strokes. So again, let's start color matching. So here we see a little bit of a teal aquamarine color. That's fine. So let's create our own. So we can use a little bit of this light blue. And because I have a feeling at some point we're going to need to bring it down in terms of a deeper blue. Here's another pigment that we can use. Then there looks to be quite a bit of green there. It is aquamarine, so we'll have some green paint available to us here. And if need be, we can use yellow. There you go. Great. So you'll notice that it's darker here in these areas. These are a little bit, probably gray can be added to it, or rather black. And there's a little hint of purple, so we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Right now we're just trying to recreate some aquamarine. So let's see here. So as you can see, definitely it's too green, too bright. So it's okay because we have deeper shades of blue that we can mix in. And even as you're creating gradients, up here you can create them on your canvas as well. So this matches much better, as you can see, at least in this general area. But we will probably need a little bit of purple for some of the others. This aquamarine part probably needs a little bit more blue and white, so I'll have to use some of my heavy body titanium white rather. This guy. And this thing's huge, so you literally just go, boop. There you go. And where were we? Ah, yes. So we found a good color match for this little part here. And you'll notice how the paint actually changes colors depending on if it's dry or wet, so don't be fooled by that. Anyway, let's try to continue creating aquamarine. I think we need a little bit more white or lightness. And then here, a little too much. Add some blue. This aquamarine is proving a bit challenging. That does match up quite a bit better, as you can see, but a bit of a perfectionist. So sometimes there's certain shades of blue, like Prussian blue, or in this case, primary blue from the Liquitex family, that I think lends itself to this kind of aquamarine. So you'll see what I'm talking about in just a second. There we go. That's beautiful. You guys see that? That matches much better. Much, much better. So again, it's primary blue from Liquitex. Good. Do a little bit here as well. Start mixing that there. And while we're on these colors, we can actually start sending it over here as well. Good. A little bit of water makes it more easily. The hell are we listening to? Yeah, we know, it's better. And already, you can tell from the color, there's hints about what's actually happening, right? So the sun is shining in through the water from this upper left corner, so that's going to be the brightest spot in terms of this painting. And again, you can actually probably add a thicker layer of paint to make it completely opaque the first time. I'm cautious to avoid doing that, because what you'll probably end up happening is just having too thick of a layer of paint. And as you can see, you'll get there as well if you just do these thin, repeated layers. It just takes time. And one thing you'll notice is I don't finish one section before I go on to the next. Oftentimes, especially when you're doing layers like this, you need them to dry. So having a little bit of ADD like I do actually helps nicely, because, okay, we started setting up a little base there, fine. Now let's move up over here, set up another base layer over here. Get the fingernail technique. That recovers that quite nicely. So that's building up. It looks like as it moves further this way, of course, it's darker. So, and there's an angle as well. You see this angle here. You have to make sure whatever you draw matches this angle. See, when it doesn't, it becomes very obvious. That's better. In this case, I'm kind of letting it bleed across. So I'm going to fix it with the fingernail anyway. What was more important to me there was just to make sure the angle was good. There you go. And this one's dried up. We can add another layer or so. So we can add some more white paint to the current mixture. A little bit of water. Again, you can see why this takes considerable patience. And you can see it's coming along nicely. So that's good. Now, while that part dries up a little bit, I was alluding to the fact we made some purple earlier. So let's start setting aside. Oops, never get paint on your cards from your canvas when you put them down. Be careful with that. There we go. So lay down a little bit of purple. It creates kind of a brownish mixture when you mix it up with the blue and the green, which is fine because there's some hints of that too elsewhere. So right now we'll just leave these on the side and come back to the card. I think we need a little refill on blue. This is the ultramarine blue from Windsor, but the best blue that we found already for the purposes of continuing the aquamarine was the primary blue from Liquitex. So we'll have that here. Okay. So now that we've got our canvas set up, let's go here. There we go. And by canvas and then palettes, of course. And then here, looks like there's a hint of purple. So let's add that. Very nice. Yeah. See that? See that? That's looking very nice. And let it dry. Seems a bit darker. So get a little bit of a darker blue, a little bit of that purple color. And bring it up here. So there's some more green. There we go. And that's color matching. Alright, so we'll give that a second to settle in there. Up here it's a little more green and lighter. So we'll mix the paints to reflect that. You know, we're talking about painting here, and then I just got an advertisement for Ace Hardware Paints on YouTube. Kind of creepy, I'm not gonna lie. There we go. You can certainly see it's starting to take shape. And you can also see the tedium necessary to get correct color balancing. So let's see if we can help my friend here who wants to join the live chat, or rather the live stream. The live chat, or rather the live stream. Alright, so hopefully we just picked up David on the stream. You know, he wanted to watch. Alright. David, welcome. So where was I? Oh yeah, with the curse catcher. So you can already start to see here the blending taking shape over here and here. But to get it perfectly right, it's very tedious. In fact, if you look at the samples that Christian Aguilar sent me as the basis for these altars, they actually don't color match perfectly. In fact, they kind of replace all this, which is a perfectly legitimate thing to do, by the way. They just kind of replace all of it with different colors that are much easier to match and more uniform. Which is fine, just, you know, in many ways I'm kind of a perfectionist. It's funny because I can be a perfectionist in some aspects and just totally not give a crap in others. But when it comes to color matching, that's something I've sort of like personally challenged myself to do since early on, so. So, where were we? Oh, yes. So, I was mixing the colors over here, realized that there's like some purple there, so fine, we're going to mix the purple again. Some of the blue and green. Might have to draw up some more green pretty soon. Then we get this color here. Kind of hard to tell, but let's see how it looks on the card. Yeah, that's good. That's nice. And then down here it's a little darker, so we'll actually get some black in there. Alright, so let's see how that looks. Nice, nice. The purple actually kind of gives it a good shade here, too. We'll add some green there, so it can blend in better. A little bit of white to opacify it. And here we go. This will help transition it from the surrounding lighter gray colors. Now we can use, again, a little more white, and you can start to sort of do this. Watch. Sort of the wave of the motions. Replicate it a little bit. It's a little too dry. We need a little more water. But I think you can kind of see what I'm going for there. It's kind of... Yeah, there you go. See? You can trace the certain motion of things. Adjust the color a little bit. And there you go, see? Now let's add some more purple up here. As you can see, that blends in perfectly. You can see it's blending in pretty nicely. Yeah, I really like that. But again, just to illustrate the point that I was making earlier, that sometimes it's easier to just make this whole one blob of color. It's easier, but again, this is really kind of like what separates like a $10 altar from like a $20, $30 altar. Level detail put into it, because like again, I'm going to show you. Compare this work that I'm doing here to that work there. So you can already see the level of detail involved is considerably different. And I'm not saying that I'm a better artist than this person, simply that I've chosen sort of a different technique, different approach, and it just so happens that mine is a little bit more time consuming, but I think in the end it'll be a much more satisfying altar for Christian when he gets this. So I think I decided that for the rest of this I'm not going to look at the reference. So let's come back over here. So all that sort of dries up. Where were we? Oh yeah, so we have this whole upper left section. Here we're going to add like a sort of a base white that we'll build off of. Over here, I'm going to clean off the brush first, get rid of some of those black pigments. And then reset ourselves with some aquamarine, which as we saw requires primary blue and green, of which green I think ran out. Oh no, there's some. Yes. And then on top of those, you got some white. Again, you can begin to appreciate sort of the difficulty in achieving perfect color matching. And I'll get rid of that. Alright, and now let's make some more aquamarine. We need more primary blue. Again, primary blue from Liquitex. I'll actually save it down here. And green here. I think the yellow helped, honestly. So, let's put a little block with it. There we go. So whoever's still there. Here we go. Yeah, the yellow's gonna help. You can already see it down here. Because what we're trying to do now is sort of get the aquamarine here. Now, I'm realizing that I don't have enough of the blue. And it looks like it needs more of this kind of sky blue to mix in with the green. So let's try that. Somewhat. There's still a blue there, right? It's more blue than green. Could the primary blue be what I'm missing? Let's find out. Yeah, so... I'm not quite happy yet with the matching. How primary blue is going to do the job. I do have at least 3 or 4 other blues with me here, so we'll go one by one. So we'll try adding more primary blue, that's what that is there. I have cerulean blue. See if that does anything. And then Ultramarine here. So let's mix it up again. And then some whites. Absolutely. These are too dark otherwise. And yet, looking at the pigments, let's try this one. There we go. There we go. You can already kind of see it matches much better. Establish a little gradient here. Need some more water, it's getting too dry. It's really freaking catchy music. Use your hand, especially there, to help you out with the gradient. So the blue that helped out the most, for future reference, was cerulean blue. Cerulean blue contributed the best to matching the aquamarine. And now you can see where we left sort of this like a little bit of a white grayish blend. It'll help us make a smoother transition as we just layer a little bit of aquamarine over it. Alright. Now that we've sort of more happily matched up the color over here with the cerulean blue, then we need to create the gradient to darker colors, as well as smoothing out this gradient over here a little bit. Usually the lighter ones are easier, because you just put a little bit of watery white paint with some of the mixture you already had, and as you can see, it kind of very easily creates a gradient. But again, you have to be careful because you want the gradient to be in the same angle, and sort of like the light source, like that. You see here where taping would have helped, but whatever. And here, yeah, it's more cerulean. And around here it's mixing with some of the darker colors, some of the purples actually. So you rehydrate that. Some black. As we move towards the darker shades over here. So those unfortunately started drying out, so I need to apply some more here. There we go. And get some black paint as well. Gives me a chance to check over here in the chat. Nothing new. Good. So we're going to get some black as well. So there's the purple there. So we're going to make a gray now with the purple, green, and blue. A little bit of white. Again, the reason you add some white is because it actually opacifies it. Alright, so now going back up here, I'll do some black and blue. There you go. See how much nicer that is? And then we're going to make a gradient towards this from the aquamarine. First we need to just make sure there's a good base of paint down here. Okay, now we'll pick up some of the leftover aquamarine from earlier and begin sort of this transition. As you can see, it's never as easy to transition shades or darker colors, but it's a million times easier to transition the lighter colors and lighter shades. Get some of that there, and then have some blue layer on top. There you go, just like that. And you can see how nice the attention to detail helps. Now we just need to add a little bit of a blue purplish tint there. I think that'll be good. And voila! So you can see, we still gotta work that branch down here into the same tree, bring these things down, and then finish up over here, and then this one will be done. So, as you can see, a simple extension can be a very involved process. It's not as simple as just like, oh, dabbing some paint here. No, it can be. But in my case, I never like it to be that simple. So, let's just finish out at least one of these guys for tonight. Do have to be up early in the morning. Alright, so, as I was saying, I want to make this lighten transition over here a little bit smoother, as well as incorporate this branch into the tree down here. So, let's work on the lighter color first. Don't forget to hydrate your paints. Some water. Especially these guys over here, which I'm going to be mixing with white. And that's going to form the basis of over here. See? how nicely that transitions. That's beautiful, just with a little bit of a dab with your finger. Yeah, I'm a fan.
Not your music. Listen anywhere, anytime. Listen to it all ad-free. All your music, no interruptions. YouTube Red. Start your free trial.
As you've probably seen, I'm using very thin layers of paint, and a lot of this is actually watered down. We're especially at the point when all these little details matter. Because once I'm basically finished with this part over here, I'm not going to come back to it. This song's extremely catchy, really. Oh, you know we are the infinity. This one doesn't. This part doesn't matter too much, since, like I said earlier, I'm going to be trying this tree branch. Then we'll go get some cerulean blue, since we know that helped with the aquamarine. Some green. Mix them up a little bit. And then help fill in this little spot here. Kind of looks like there's a little hill here, so make sure the contours reflect that. There, yeah, you can already kind of see what I'm going for there. Oh, you know we are the infinity. Good thing it's all copyright free music. I don't want to get any strikes on my channel. I actually write this music to myself, like the style, but oh Lord knows I have such a hard time writing repetitive music. I know it's ironic, but there's a reason I like progressive trance, because at least it's modulating somewhere, you know? well, modulating in sort of like the more vernacular sense, not so much in the actual, you know, modulating key sense. Oh, sorry, I'm a little off camera there. No, I think it should be lighter up here, actually. Let me take it back. Not that light, but... There we go. Alright, I think that's enough messing around there. Now we just finish up the tree. Or seaweed, or whatever the hell that is. We'll take some black here. Add some of the aquamarine stuff from earlier. Hair. There we go. And notice we haven't even switched brushes yet. This one's been pretty good for all this work, because right now we've just been sort of laying down gradients, not even so much finer details. But as you can see, this brush is still pretty good for even some of these finer details, like this branch. Yeah, I think that works perfectly fine. And then we can start to sort of see what we're going to be doing here. Yeah, so actually guys, I'm getting pretty tired, so I think I'm going to call it a night, at least for today. I just wanted to show some of you guys sort of how the process of making these altars. But yeah, you can already see how long have we been streaming. It's been 1.5 hours, and this is the progress that we made on one of them. Now, that being said, we did lay out sort of the opaque black frame around the other ones, but again, just goes to show you and giving you appreciation of the level of effort that needs to go in to get the perfect color matching. Which, like I said, there's ways to get around it, but I don't know, it's just not as satisfying when you cut corners. So hopefully tomorrow or next couple days I'll be streaming again, showing you guys these techniques. And yeah, sharing more of this work with you guys. So thank you for watching, and this is the Dean of the Merit Institute signing off.